Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Yardstick webinar. And in keeping with early on in the year, we have another fantastic guest joining us today. So early on in the year, we had Rory Sutherland, and today we have Andy Bounds joining us. And you're in for a treat today. Marketing, sales, and communication tips from someone who is a genuine master at doing this. So really pleased to have Andy here. But before we get into that, Dan, do you want to do a little bit of housekeeping first of all?
Sure thing. Right. So, as always, I'm Dan, the head of branding and design here at the Yardstick Agency. So, what do we need to know for today's session? Well, looking at some of the names in the attendees list, we've got a number of fresh faces in the crowd. We've got some fresh meat. So, welcome to your very first Yardstick webinar. The familiar faces among you will know that we encourage as many questions as humanly possible, so get stuck in. Phil's going to be leading with his own questions today, but I'll be picking up plenty of your questions to ask Andy as we go along. As always, again, it's a safe space. Challenge us, agree with us, tell us if we're speaking nonsense, or if we're speaking the opposite of nonsense. You can tell us that as well. And you can do that by using the Q&A box or the chat function. So I'm going to be monitoring both today, and I'll read all the things I see out at regular intervals. And depending on where we end up in 60 minutes time, we'll sweep up as many as we can before we have to wave goodbye. To assist that effort, our client engagement manager, Abby, will be answering a few of the questions directly in the chat today and providing links to any resources or links and things that we mention as we go along in the session. And then at the end, she's going to tell us all about July's webinar, where we've got another very special guest. So make sure you stick around for that. And finally, no doubt you're going to want to rewatch this. I know I certainly will. So Abby will also be making sure that a recording of the session and any show notes will be arriving in your inbox later today. So I think that's it for housekeeping. So over to Phil and Andy to get the session started.
Thanks, Dan. Much appreciated. Right. So a little slide to introduce Andy. Andy arrives in my inbox every Tuesday morning. It's an email that I look forward to getting every Tuesday. And Andy's a sales and communication expert, a genius whose advice can't be ignored. That was a quote that was given to Andy based on one of, I think, your presentations, Andy. But I wonder if you could just start by telling the audience, everyone on the webinar today, a little bit about your history, Andy, and what's got you to where you are today.
Okay, thank you. So my job is to help people achieve more every time they speak. And that might be selling more or marketing better or just generally being more effective at work. So I am someone who helps people be more successful through communication. The thing that people find most interesting is nothing to do with my normal credentials. So my normal credentials, I've written books and I got voted Great Britain Sales Trainer of the Year and lovely things like this. But the things people are most interested in, the fact that my mum is blind. So when I was a kid, the person who told me to speak can't see. So I became sort of very interested in and hopefully good at explaining things to my mum. Now, why is that relevant? Because when we're marketing and when we're selling, people are blind to why they should see us, why they should choose us, why they should give us money. And I guess that's it. So people tend to say, isn't he the bald guy with the blind mum? And they don't tend to talk about my awards as much as I'd like them to. But there you go.
The bald guy with the blind mum.
There you go.
That's an epithet to be known by. And I, as I said earlier, I first became aware of you, Andy, on your Tuesday email that arrives week in, week out, Tuesday morning. You can set your clock by it. And that's where I'd like to start. Two questions, really. Why did you choose Tuesday? Really interested in that. And how important is it, do you believe, that people remain consistent in their marketing, like you've done with your Tuesday email?
Okay, so the answer to your first question is depressingly basic and childish. I didn't want to do Monday because everyone gets to work on Monday. They don't want to read it. I didn't want to do Friday because people... So I knew it was going to be Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. And I ended up going for Tuesday because it begins in T. So I called them Tuesday Tips. There you go. So I'd like to say it was more learned than that, but it wasn't. Yeah. Now, as far as consistency goes, the second question, The most important thing is to do something that you think you can stick at, whatever that is. Now, I'm very happy to have the discipline of doing something every Tuesday. But if you're one of these people who will do it for a bit, but after 6 weeks, you'll get bored, don't do it. So the most important thing is to find something that suits you and you're happy to commit to, whatever that might be. I love the discipline of having to create something every week. I love it. So it's very easy with the work we all do to sometimes you get to the end of the week and you haven't created something. But my passion's creativity. So if I wasn't creating stuff because I was, I don't know, attending boring internal update meetings, I think I'd mess my life up in some way. So for me, it helped me have the discipline to do something I wanted to do anyway.
Where do you get all your ideas from? Have you got a bank of ideas? How do you find the ideas and know what to write about that particular week?
Well, I once heard someone say that stand-up comedians, the main thing that they often have is they have a pen and paper with them at all times, or a little iPhone. So because this funny stuff happens all around you, but if you're looking for it, you see it. So they will always like make notes of, oh, that's funny, I must talk about that. So I suppose I've got my version of that. I work with some wonderful customers and I love them all dearly. And they're the ones who often give me my inspiration. So they will say, Andy, we've got a problem with X. And I think, oh, that would probably be a good topic for a Tuesday tip. Sometimes I explain something and it happens to land really well. And I think, oh, I've not explained it as well as that before. Right, okay, well, I'm just going to put that in a tip. So it's all based on my customers. I don't sit at home in a little dark room thinking of things. It's my customers' feedback that's the thing that helps me understand what to talk about.
So you're living and breathing that they ask you answer principle from Marcus Sheridan, someone like that.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes like something will happen which, because I'm looking out for him, a little comedian's pad, something that happens that I think, oh, this is quite a nice story. So there's a tip that's coming out in the near future. I spoke at a conference recently, and child 4, as we don't give our kids names, there's too many of them. So I've got child 4, and he's 11. I thought he might like to see what his dad does. So I said to him, now, if you want, I'll try and get you out of school on Friday. And if you want, come and see me at this conference. There'll be a couple of thousand people there. It's local. It's dead good when you're the speaker, you get in a green room and I'll introduce you to the other speakers. And one of the people there is going to be Stephen Mulhern. You know, when we watch Catchphrase, he's the guy who introduced it. I'll try and introduce you to him. We got some of the Dragon's Den there. It's going to be amazing. And I did this massive long rant as to why he should come. And I said, what do you think? And there was silence for a couple of seconds. And he said, did you say I don't have to go to school on Friday? Unbelievable. So everything I'd said was a total waste of time, apart from and so I thought it was a really good, you can get a good lesson from that, you know, once the customer says, yes, shut up. So I thought that's a nice little tip in there. So if something happens in my life, so it's usually the customer asks and therefore the tip, but sometimes something happens and I think, oh, that's in my little micro life, but can make a macro point. Yeah. So I never would do a tip saying this happened to my son, the end. I would say this happened with my son, but the macro point is this. So they're my two things. Do customers give me any guidance, and or does something happen which I think I can make a macro point with?
Okay, so because a lot of people on this call will struggle with content creation. We all struggle from time to time, don't we?
Yeah.
And having that list of ideas that you can go back to means that you're not faced with that blank sheet of paper. So that's a great tip.
Yeah, sorry, can I give you one other tip? Sorry, I should have said this before. A mistake I made to start with is I always wrote them Monday evening because I thought they'll be so fresh and current. But the stress on me on a Monday evening was awful. And so now I've always written them at least one in advance because I didn't like that stress. So what you do is you find something that works for you just from a logistics point of view. So I don't do them on Monday evening anymore. It's always like 2 or 3 days before. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I thought I should add that.
No, to be fair, Andy, that's what I was going to ask. Where do you do your writing? I mean, I sit, because I'm a sad so-and-so, on a Saturday morning in a Cafe Nero writing my blog for the next week. That's my writing space. Yeah. Where's your writing space? Where do you go and write?
So my writing space is very simple. So I love that you've got your way to do it. The way I think about this, if you think of what you're like as a person, so everyone listening to this, think what you're like. There'll be your A zone time when you're good, your B zone, your C zones when you're rubbish. So many people are quite A in the morning, and then they have lunch and they go to a C straight away because they've had too much food, and they might go to B later on in the afternoon. Now, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but a lot of people are. So what I do is I want to do my creative time in my A zone. So therefore, I'll always put it in my diary early on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, write it in the morning when I'm already on it. it's a bit like if I've got something which is quite contentious or complicated to do, I'll do it first thing in the morning because that's when my brain's at its best. When I'm writing books, I even will set my alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning and write from 5 till 7 because that's when I'm at my best. It's easy, it's tempting to think I'll do it later on in the day, but as all my customers will tell you, I am rubbish later on in the day, so we tend to do things in the morning.
Do you enjoy writing? Do you enjoy the creative process?
Yeah, I do. And I find that I enjoy it, but it's not enough of a hobby that I would do it without some sort of pressure on me. So I like the positive tension of every Tuesday. When I'm doing the books, I like the positive tension of I've got to do like 40,000 words by 3 months on Friday. So yes, I do enjoy it, but I'm not sure I'd be as productive if I didn't have some deadlines.
And one of the things you do every week in your emails is add value. There's no sales in there. It's all added value. Mm-hmm. I was, Dan and I were talking about it earlier, actually. There is a new podcast out, Simon Sinek being interviewed by Stephen Bartlett, and it landed a couple of days ago. And one of the things Sinek talks about is just permanently adding value, without expectation of return.
Yeah.
That's clearly working for you, just constantly adding value every Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Just talk a bit more about that, if you would, Andy, and why you follow that approach as opposed to overtly selling.
Okay, I mean, part of it is my personality. I'm not very salesy. I'm very privileged and I'm very happy with my level of success, but I'm not someone who's quite a hardcore salesperson. I'm not like that. I like creating, like we just said. I like sharing stuff. One of my customers said that what I do is what they call verbal puke. It just like comes out of me all the time. So I thought I'll take that as a compliment, even though I'm not sure you meant it as one. So I do like this. I feel I'm always careful with this because I understand what they're saying. I find it easier to be like all lovely and altruistic now that maybe I don't need the money as much as I did. When I first started, I wasn't too generous then because I thought I'm not sure I'm going to be able to eat this month. And so you have to decide on where you're based in your life and how happy you are and all that sort of stuff. But I've been doing it since 2010, these particular Tuesday tips, and I wasn't as successful then as I am now. So I think they've worked hand in hand. But when I started my business in 2003, I wasn't doing it then because I was hungry.
So what were you doing then?
Then it was a bit more overt selling. And it was like talking to more people. I mean, selling very simply is 3 things. Number 1, get an opportunity. Number 2, try and close it. And then number 3, turn sale 1 into sale 2. So most people don't focus on the third one, but that's the easiest one. So once somebody likes you, saying, how else can I help you, is probably more likely to lead to a sale than writing any Tuesday tip ever. So if somebody already likes you, how else can I help you? Well, you can or you can't, right? And if you can't, you say, well, that's fine. Would you be interested to know what other customers are asking me to do for them at the minute? And everyone goes, yeah, all right then, Andy. So I can now talk about other products. So that's all well and good. I quite like to start with. It was much more needs must. I need to. So I was focusing very much on how can I get in front of people and how can I hopefully convince them to buy something.
And would you, if you had your time again, would you change that or would you do it in the same way?
I would do it very similar. I might have gone to Tuesday tips earlier because I enjoyed doing them so much. The main thing I would do differently is this, and anyone who speaks to me about starting their business, this is the first advice I would give them. The biggest mistake I made was what I did is I copied what I saw other people do, which sounds like a good idea, right? But if you only copy what you see other people do, the only thing you copy is the visible stuff. So I'd see everyone posting on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and then and so I just thought I had to do all that, and I thought I needed quite a good, expensive website, and I thought I needed to join the Institute of Directors, so I made that mistake of looking at everything's visible thing and copying the visible stuff. So the advice that I would have given my younger self and that I give to people now is this: the easiest way to get started really is look at everyone you know, look at all your main contacts. Let's say we got 100 people because I can do the maths. And what you do is this: you look at 100 people and you think, how much do they like me? Right? And then secondly, how much power do they have to help me? Either because they might buy something or they're well connected. So those 2 things, love and power. How much do they love me and how much power? So for example, my mum loves me a lot, but she doesn't have much power to give me any business. Richard Branson doesn't even know me, but he could probably give me £1 million if he wanted to. And so if you go through your list of your top 100 contacts, you'll find some people who love you and also probably have the power to help you. So the mistake or learning that I made was, for the first year, I hadn't realized that was a thing. So I copied all the stuff and I spent money on this website and I spent money on the, what I should have done is gone through my 100 things, found the people who loved me and had power to help me, and then contacted them and said, I'm just starting in business. Can I ask your advice? So that was the mistake I made. I didn't use my existing contact sphere well enough.
Love and power. Love that.
Love and power. That's it. And if you grade everyone ABC, I like ABC because that's all my brain can cope with. Everyone who's an AA, they love you and they've got the power. So not me mum, she's probably an AC. Not Richard Branson, he's probably a CA. But I did know people who worked for big banks. And I did know people, I used to be a chartered accountant who had stayed in chartered accountancy. And so I just found that was my way forward, the love and the power.
That's fabulous. That's something everyone can take away from this call and go and start doing this afternoon. Dan, actually a couple of questions, a couple of comments, one from Chopin, one from Paul. Do you want to go with that?
Certainly. So we were talking about love and power. Paul's given a lot of love in the comment section, saying Andy's energy and passion for his work is wonderful and infectious. And the point here is that really successful salespeople don't sell, they just help, and the sales then come to them. Chopin asks the question that's probably on everyone's mind. You have to number your children, Andy. How many do you have?
Well, I think it's 4. Yeah, I've got 4 children. I was going to tell you the names of them. They're just called child 1, 2, 3, and 4. Really. And I have 2 grandchildren because I'm that old. But I give them names because I quite like them. The children I don't seem to like enough.
Brilliant. And then a great question in from Andrew, who asks, how have you grown your distribution list?
So a few things. One of them is every time I would speak at a conference, and you often have hundreds of people at a conference, I would say, would you like, as a follow-up to my conference keynote, would you all like to receive my Tuesday tips? If you would, either just send me. So you say, so before GDPR, I would say to the conference organizer, just give everyone's email address and we'd sign them up. So that was one thing we did. Then after GDPR, I would put the link on. So here's the link, go on this. And then what I did, I thought I can make this even easier for people rather than having to go to a link. So now what I do is I put on my final slide my email address. And then I say, there's my email address. Please email me. If you want my slides, put the word slides in the subject line. Don't even say please, just say slides. And if you want my weekly tips, just put tips. And if you want both, just put slides, tips. You don't even need to say and or the word please. And so I just want to make it really easy for people to do it. Sometimes I try and have a big upsurge, and once every 2 or 3 years, no more often than that, I'll just say in my Tuesday tip I've sent out, I'll say, I'd love to get a few more people receiving these tips. They're all free. Please, could you forward this link to someone you think might benefit? And the last time we did that, we had there's about 30, 40,000 people on the list now. We had about 10,000 people I was sent it to. And of those 10,000, we got another 2,000 signups almost in the same day because everyone just forwarded the link to the mates.
Yeah, I'm a really green emailer, so I don't think I'd ever be able to email without saying please. I don't think I could physically send the email.
Well, do you know what? And someone did say please, but we still read their email, even though I haven't explained myself very well here. I just want to ease the path, right? So, and sometimes people say, "Oh, I loved your presentation, loved your energy, loved the content. Please, can I have the slides?" That's fine as well, but I don't want people to think it's going to be hassle to get. I love this idea of easing the path. It's like when we do proposals with work. What we do is we don't really have statements of work. We only work with people who seem quite nice to us. So what we do is we say, here's the proposal. To accept it, all you have to do is hit reply and say yes. Just yes, that'll do. We'll count that as paperwork. And as soon as we get your email saying yes, the next steps are we'll do this. So even with our proposals, it's really easy for people to accept it. I think sometimes in marketing, people make it too hard for the customer to buy stuff.
And that takes us to where I wanted to go next, Andy. What for you is the difference between marketing and sales?
I don't really know. I don't really care, actually. The thing I'm most interested in is it going to generate more opportunities for me to help more people? I suppose you might say marketing is letting the market know about you. The end point of marketing, I think, is you have an opportunity. And the end point of selling is the opportunity turns into a sale. But ultimately, the two work together to generate an opportunity for you to work with someone. And the way I look at, I love what you said before then, Dan, the way I look at selling and business is very simple. It's like two circles, a big one and a small one. What happens is if someone decides they're going to work with you, they are going to get a big circle worth of value, yeah, and they're going to pay you a small amount of fees. So that's the way I think life is. So marketing ultimately and selling ultimately helps that transaction happen, whereas they get that much value and they give you this much money.
And our audience here are largely financial advisors, financial planners, mortgage brokers. The people on this call, we might have had a few other people sneak in, but that's largely who they are. And they offer huge value, as you say, to their clients for relatively modest fee.
Yep.
I suspect, in fact, I know, most of the general public, consumers, will struggle to differentiate between one financial advisor and another, one financial planner and another. How important for you is differentiation? And what tips have you got for help people stand out?
Okay, so differentiation is absolutely critical unless you're the cheapest out there. Because if you're the cheapest out there, it's fine. But what they say, the bargain basement is not a very pleasant place to trade. You know, you can always find somebody cheaper. Someone's always willing to buy the business. So differentiation is critical. Now, with differentiation, if the customer finds it hard to differentiate between us, that's on us. That's our fault. Yeah. So we need to be clearer with this. So what we have to do is we have to work out why we're different. And if we can't think out why we're different, then we're always going to lose to someone who's cheaper than us, who does the same thing as us. So we have to really spend time on it. Now, sometimes it's really clear what your differentiators are, and sometimes it isn't. So if any of you listening to this think, I'm not sure why we're different, there's two things that I find work well with my customers. Number one is it's like a features table. You know, if you're buying a car and it says, these are all the features in the different car. If you buy a class 1, you get tick, tick, tick. If you buy a class 2, tick, 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 class 3, tick. So what you do is you list all the features down the side and you list you and your competitors across the top and you tick across and you see where you've got things that they don't have. That's one thing to do. If you don't have anything ticked that they don't have, you will always lose if they're cheaper than you because you're not offering extra value, but you are charging extra money. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Do a features table. That's a good thing to do. And or do this as well. What you can do is you could think, what extra things could I offer my customers, which has two things. Number one, they would find it very valuable. But number two, it will be really easy for me to do. So I want something like high value for them, really easy for me. So, for example, what I did is I realized when I did this, I did have quite a few different features, but I thought, I'm sure I can add more value in a way that will be easy for me to do. So I don't have very many skills. I can't even grow hair. Look at that, it's ridiculous. But one thing I do seem to be quite good at is reviewing people's proposals very quickly. Like, I don't know why, I'm just really good at it. People will send me a proposal, I can look at it, and within 2 minutes, I can give people 5 ideas, which will help their next proposal be better. So therefore, one of the things that I will do when I'm talking to someone is say, so what you get with me is you get this, you get this, you get this, you get this. One extra thing you get with me is my free proposal review thing. So I want you to send me your 3 most recent proposals and also talk to me about your very next proposal. And I'll review those 3 for you. I'll give you a list of things you can do better next time. And I'll give you some insights into how you can write your next one really well. So the customers go, oh my word, what an amazing value add that is. And it is, if you think that's a pretty big circle, that is. Yeah, you can rewrite someone's proposal template and it's like, is business changing, that is. But actually it takes me about 20 minutes. Do you see what I mean? So if I would urge everyone to think here, what's your secret sauce? What's the thing that you can do that maybe some other people don't do? And you can either offer that or sort of throw it away as something that we'll do. Another thing which I find very easy is I say to my customers, after we finish working together, you have access to me for 3 months after we finish. So any of you can ring at any point about anything, and I'll give you free advice as long as you want. And so it sounds really lovely, and it is really lovely, and people take advantage of it. But to be honest, it's not that hard for me because it's just a few 5-minute phone calls.
And those 5-minute phone calls could lead into referrals and other sales, I guess, with those clients.
They might, but and lovely when they do. But the most important thing is it makes their big circle even bigger because they're getting more and more value from it.
So giving something away extra for free that is relatively low friction and isn't going to spend a lot of time. What are the key things you talked about reviewing proposals? what are the key things that people get wrong?
Oh God, where do you start? Number one, here we go. I feel this quite strongly. Number one, and this is the most important one, before you send a proposal, agree with the client what the client wants to see in the proposal. Like, nobody does this. So if someone says to me they want a proposal, I say, right, okay, well, I don't want to send you anything irrelevant, so can I ask you some questions? Now, if I said that to you, what are you going to say? You're not going to say, it's all right, be irrelevant, are you? You're going to say, what are your questions? And I said, well, what are the main things you want to know? Like, what are the main headings we should have in there? Should we just put the outcomes of this, the deliverables of that, the prices that, the return on investments that, next steps of that? Would that be enough? You go, yeah, that's fine. I say that might only be one side of A4. Is that all right? You go, yeah, that's fine. I say, do you want me to colour it in and design it, or do you just want it in Word? You go, Word's fine. So like, we have this chat. This chat takes a couple of minutes, and now you get a really tailored thing, which is exactly what you want. And people are very wedded to things they've come up with. You feel you've sort of told me what to write, so it's hard for you not to buy the thing when we've already agreed it anyway. So if I already have agreed with you what you're buying, what you're paying, what's going in the proposal, then the proposal comes a short written confirmation of what we've already agreed. It's not this long exploration of things we haven't talked about yet. So if I've agreed everything verbally, then the proposal is going to be short and tailored, and we should be fine. So that's the first thing most people get wrong. They don't agree stuff verbally. So the proposal has too many surprises in it. So one of the reasons customers go straight to the price section is they don't know what the price was. That to me seems a bit nuts. You're better at describing your price than a piece of paper is. So you should describe the price. If the customer's got any price objections, you can deal with it verbally. And when it's agreed, your proposal then says, as agreed, the price is going to be £50,000. Yeah. And so once you do all this stuff, that's the main thing people get wrong with proposals. That trumps everything else. Second thing to say with proposals is this. When you send it, it's easy to get ghosted. So what you do is this. You say the next two steps are, number one, I will put in writing what we've just agreed. So I don't call it my proposal, I call it our agreement, right? So I'll put what we've just agreed. That's the first step. But the second step is we'll need to have a quick chat about it to make sure we're both happy with it. And neither of us are having any second thoughts about what we just agreed. So if I get it to you today, what time are you free tomorrow for us to have a quick 5-minute chat about it? In other words, what I refuse to do is, number one, send a proposal when we haven't agreed anything, because that's going to be a long guess and you're not going to like it anyway. And then secondly, I refuse to send a proposal without the follow-up call pre-booked. Because that way, if I don't do that, I'm just going to get ghosted. So if everyone listening to that just did those two things, agree everything verbally and pre-agree when you're going to have a follow-up call, most of the problems with proposals would disappear.
Fantastic. There is some very practical advice there that Yardstick can use, and I'm sure everybody else on this call can use. For the financial advisors, planners, and mortgage brokers on the call, before they get to that proposal stage, they generally have this free, no obligation meeting with potential clients. That first date, when they're getting to know the potential client and working out if the fit is right. What tips have you got there to increase the probability of actually the client, the person then becoming a client before the proposal stage?
Yeah, great question. So the only aim of that first meeting, they're not going to buy anything in the first meeting unless you're lucky. So the only aim of the first meeting is that you get a second meeting. That's it, right? So don't get too far ahead. The only aim of meeting one is that you get meeting two. So the way I looked at first meetings is two words beginning with I. By the way, I can hear people beginning to think, he doesn't do very complicated things, does he, Andy? No, I don't really. One of my customers said to me the other day, I'm not sure with you, are you a genius or a simpleton? So I can tell you the answer to that. The reason I do things like two things beginning with I is because it means it's not very hard for my head. The two things beginning with I are this: invaluable. So the first meeting has to be invaluable with the client. They have to think that was a really good use of my time. Usually, but not always, the best way to make something invaluable is to teach them something. Yeah. So teach them something they didn't know. In my first meeting with a client or a potential client, when they go, I never knew that, that's really useful. Or I never thought about it like that. Or, wow, is that really what people are doing? Anytime they're a bit surprised in the first meeting, then I've ticked me invaluable box. That's the first thing to say. Now, they don't find it invaluable to find out the year I was founded and how many offices my company's got. Nobody cares. But they do find it invaluable to know the three main problems people have in the sales world. They do want to know the three best questions people ask if they want to sell pensions to people. Do you see what I mean? So I want to make sure it's invaluable. That's the first I. And the second I, incomplete. And by incomplete, there's a sense that we need to meet again. So let's say you and I are having a conversation. And as a result of this, I realise that you want some extra help about, I don't know, tax or something. And I've got a lovely thought-leading white paper thing in the office. What I could do is I could say to you, oh, that's good. If you want to know that, I've got a white paper on this. I'll get back to the office and I'll send it to you. Have a look at it and bring me back if you want. Yeah, but you see, if I send you the white paper, that's now complete. You don't need to speak to me anymore because you had a question and I've answered it. So one of the things in our desire to please people, we try and complete stuff. Don't complete it. You make it incomplete. So if you said to me you have questions and I've got some stuff there, what I would say is, all right, cool. So this is what I'll do. There are some things in the office. Let me dig them out. These things always make more sense verbally than by email. So I'll dig out relevant stuff. Let's get together again in a couple of days' time. I'll bring that with me and then I'll run through it. Now, that's what I mean by invaluable and incomplete. You've learned stuff. You've thought it was useful. You absolutely want to see me again. And at the next meeting, we're going to bring some new stuff. So therefore, you need to meet me. If I complete it in my desire to please you, then there's no reason for you to meet with me again. So invaluable and incomplete are the two main words for people listening with first meetings.
And during that first meeting, you're getting, presumably, at some point you're talking about that proposal question. What do you want to see in the proposal? Is that towards the end of that first meeting?
It depends on how the first meeting is. I mean, the way I think of sales is it's like a simple of steps. All you need to do is go from whatever the first thing is to the next thing. So if it's going to be meeting 1, meeting 2, proposal, whatever, then I'm not thinking about the proposal in meeting 1 with my business, actually. What I'm doing is, all I'm thinking is, are we going to have meeting 2 or not? Because the proposal is not going to happen until after meeting 2. So all I want to say in meeting 1 is, I'll tell you what, we should have a chat again about this, blah, blah, blah. At the end of meeting 2, there may be a proposal, in which case I'll say, so the next 2 steps are, I'll put in writing what we just agreed, and then we need to have a call about it. So the thing is, don't worry too much about the proposal in meeting 1. All you worry about in meeting 1 is, can you get meeting 2? And all you worry about in meeting 2 is, are you going to have meeting 3, or is it get to proposal? Or is it something you think, I'm not interested, so we need to qualify this out? Yeah.
So if everybody on here, mortgage advisors, financial planners, financial advisors, will have your own sales process. So if anybody's got any questions about your sales process right now and wants to put them in the chat, do that, and Dan will read them out.
Oh yeah, send them in. Yeah.
And Andy, you can give a bit of feedback for that. But at some point, the advisor, planner, potentially mortgage broker is going to send a proposal out to the prospect, assuming it's a right fit prospect.
Yeah.
Actually, let's pause on that. Wrong fit prospects, people you meet that aren't right for the services. What tips have you got there to sort of hand them off elegantly to make sure that they get a good experience?
Cool. So you use the past tense. So you say, I've really enjoyed meeting you. All right. So at some point, you might say that right at the end or like penultimately. So, I've really enjoyed this meeting. I hope you have too. But then what I want to do is I want to say with charm that we're not going to work together. And I find the best way to do this. I say, I've really enjoyed meeting you. But as I hear more about what you're interested in, I don't think that we're going to be really good partners for each other. I do know a couple of other people who I think might be better for you. So I think the best way I can help you will be to introduce you to them. Would that be okay? Yeah, so that's why. So I don't say you aren't worthy of me, and I don't say I'm not worthy of you. I just say I don't think we're good partners for this. Yeah, and I like the phrase of we aren't good partners, because in fact you're saying there's nothing wrong with anyone. It's just we're not that good. So I was talking to somebody recently. They asked me to do something, and then we had a bit of a chat about price and return on investment. Their return on investment was going to be in the millions of pounds. And I said, my price for what you want, it was quite high value. It was quite high input for me, and it was going to be 50 grand. So they were going to pay me 50. They were going to get back 5 million. So I think that's quite a good return on investment. And they said they didn't have budget of any more than 5,000. So I thought, okay, here we go. And I said, so we only really, I think, have a couple of options. One of them is, can we have a talk about where you might be able to get the extra 45,000 budget from? Or if you don't think that's a goer, I think we'll just have to go our separate ways. But I do know some people who are much cheaper than me, and I can hand you over to them. What would you like to do? See, it's still helpful. It's still charming. It's not going to be, if you can't have my 50 grand, I'm not interested. And I didn't want to argue with, I remember someone saying to me once, I'm sure you got a really good price objection response, but the fact is I quite want a Rolls Royce and I can't afford that either. So I just don't have the money for it. well, that's absolutely fine, but that means we aren't going to be good partners for each other. It's no one's fault. We just aren't. So therefore, you might want to go and have a chat with them. So just do it with charm, but you have to know what you're going to say, because if you don't know what you're going to say, you probably mess it up. So one of my number one learnings, I wish I'd known this before, is I think about things I'm dreading, like the price objection, or we're going to qualify them out. So I think about things I'm dreading, and I work out what script am I going to say if it comes up. So if somebody says we can't afford it, I know what to say. If somebody says drop your price, I know what to say. If someone, I want to qualify them out, I know what to say. And one of the things as a professional salesperson, professional marketeer, is you really need to have prepared how to respond for the things that you don't like.
Preparing for objections, so you are well versed in being able to handle it before it comes along.
Absolutely.
How would you suggest that the advisors and planners and mortgage brokers on here handle that objection about price or value?
Okay, cool. So the 2 words, so if anyone's making notes, please write down these 2 words, script and practice. So you have to work out what your script's going to be, and I'll give you some example scripts now, but then you have to practice saying them. Objections are verbal things, so you have to practice them verbally. So, for example, when people learn how to drive, they don't just read the highway code and go, that'll be fine. They actually go behind the steering wheel and give it a go, right? And they try and ask the car park, and when that's okay, they might go on a slow road, and then they might go on a fast road. So it's the same thing with objections. What you want to do is you want to practice what it's like in real life, but you do it in an unscary way. So you need to drive around, ask the car park, you need to work out what your script is, and then you say it like on your own, like just try it on your own. Then maybe have a little role play with someone else. People who don't like the word role play, call it practice. Practice with someone when it doesn't matter, so you don't mess it up when it does matter. All right. Now, in this practice, you'll be playing roles. It's not a role play. Anyone who kicks off about role play, right? It's just a practice where you're playing roles, but you just so anyway, what we need is we need a script, and I can give you as much or as little as you want about this, but there's various things that you can do. One of them is, I don't want to talk about price early. I want to talk about price late. So you know those 2 circles I mentioned before? I don't want to talk about my price until they've already told me the big circle. Okay. So if someone early on says, Andy, how much is your price? And I've not talked about what they want from me yet, I say, I don't know. This is my script. How much is your price? I don't know. It depends what you want me to do, and I don't need you to pay for things you don't need. That would be ridiculous. Let me ask you some questions, and then when I understand what you want, I'll then be able to tell you the price. All right, so that's basically, so I'm not telling you the price. If I want to ask someone, and again, in the financial planning world, I've worked with lots of people, and they know that if they say to someone, what's the most important thing here? They're going to go, price. So what you say is use the words other than. So you say, other than price, which of course we can look at later, what's your main priority here? So other than price, what's your main priority? And when they go price, I've just said other than. Like what's your... And so what you can do is you can almost script how to ask the question. So if someone says to me early about price, I go, I don't know what you want yet. Let me ask you questions. And if I want to ask them about their priorities, I say, other than price, what are your main priorities? Now, later on, if somebody then talks about price, so if somebody says your competitors are cheaper, I've got an answer for that. If somebody says, can you give me a discount? I've got an answer for that. But it all comes down to script and practice. You've got to know what to say. Now, I've given you the example of other than price. That's quite straightforward. But if you didn't know the phrase other than price, it's literally impossible.
What's your discount answer?
My discount, if someone says, give us a discount, I mean, I don't do discounts, so I'm going to tell you my answer, but other people would say a different thing. So if somebody says, can we have a discount? I say, oh, thanks for asking, but we don't do those because it isn't fair on my other customers who pay these rates. If you did want to pay less, we'd have to reduce the scope in somewhere. We can talk about how we can best do that. But if you wanted everything, the only thing that's fair is you'd have to pay the rate I've just quoted. Which do you want us to do?
Okay. So we've got a few people putting their sales process in the chat. We'll come to that in a second, and make sure we get people's questions answered. But sounds to me that you're saying first meeting, proposal based on what the prospect wants to see in the proposal, but you don't send that until they agree to the second meeting. Is that right?
I don't agree the proposal till we've agreed everything. I don't send the proposal till the end. So I've got a little piece of paper and a chunky pen. We're going multimedia here. So this is how how for my business, the sale works like this, right? So for me, I have, if you can see instead of my face, it says meeting number. Can you see that all right? Or
It's a bit blurred, Andy, but
is it a bit blurred?
Talk us through it.
Right, okay. It looked very good for me anyway, so I'm happy. So what it had a number 1 sign, and then an arrow, then a number 2 sign, and then an arrow, then proposal. So number 1, this proposal thing, I don't think about the proposal until we've already agreed what they're going to buy. In fact, let's get the word proposal out of everyone's mind. Replace it with the word confirmation. What I think a proposal is a written confirmation of what we've already agreed they're going to buy and they're going to pay me. So I don't put anything in writing until all that's agreed. So in meeting number 1, nothing's agreed. It was just an exploratory chat to see if he wanted meeting number 2. I'm not thinking of a proposal because I've got nothing to confirm yet. Yeah. So my proposal basically says, when I get to write my proposal, it basically says, we've agreed you want these outcomes. We've agreed this is how I'm going to help you get them. We've agreed you're going to pay me this amount of money. And we've agreed the next steps are X, Y, Z. So that's all I want to see in the proposal. So I'm not thinking of the proposal in meeting 1. All I'm thinking in meeting 1 is, can I be I invaluable? Can we make it I incomplete? And should we get together for meeting 2? I'm not thinking of the written confirmation because we haven't agreed anything yet. So I don't think about the proposal until we've already agreed what they're going to buy.
Okay. So proposal, you agree what they're going to buy, proposal goes out. How do you handle the next steps?
So what I do is, as I said before, the 2 things are, I say, I'll get the thing in writing and then we need to have a call tomorrow. Yeah. So I pre-book in the call. Yeah. And what I do is if I invite you to the meeting, so you've agreed we're going to talk tomorrow, 10 o'clock, 10 minutes, then what I call it is meeting with Andy Bounds to agree next steps following our proposal. So that is the subject line of the meeting. It's not called catch up. It's not called demo, not called any of that rubbish. It's just called meeting with Andy Bounds to agree next steps following our proposal. All right. It doesn't say his proposal. It's our proposal because I'm working with the customer here. So when I have the call tomorrow, I say, first question, did you get the proposal? You go, yep. And I go, did it make any sense? Did I include everything you think we agreed? Yep. And then I just say, are we good to go? Or do you have any final concerns? So did you get it? Was it right? Are we good to go? Have you got any final concerns? Now, that's my favorite closing script. Are we good to go? Have you got any final concerns? If they say we're good to go, I mean, the golden rule of sales, my golden rule of sales is this. When the customer says yes, shut up. They've said yes. So if I say, are we good to go? Have you got any final concerns? If they go, we're good to go, I go, brilliant. In that case, it's dead easy to move forward. We just do this, this, this. If I say, are we good to go? Have you got any final concerns? If they go, we've got some final concerns, I go, I'm glad I asked. What are they? And they say, well, can we have a discount? And then I use my discount objection script. Yeah, I'm not sure we can do it right now. We've got a problem. And then I use my priority script. Yeah, so I love that. So let's work backwards. Meeting number 1, all that matters is getting meeting number 2. The way you get meeting number 2 is you do invaluable and incomplete. You then have meeting number 2. It all goes well. And they say, yeah, let's do it in writing. So I say, right, so what do you want in the proposal? When are we going to have the follow-up call? 10 o'clock tomorrow, 10 minutes. When we have the follow-up call then, I say, are you happy with it? Did it include everything you wanted? Are we good to go? Have you got any final concerns? And then I deal with the concerns if we got them. And as soon as they say yes, I go, good. In that case, the next steps are this. So it's as sort of as simple as that, really.
That's great. Dan, you have some comments, questions in the chat. So
I certainly do, don't I? Right, where do we start? So a short while ago, Matt asked a great question. So Matt's question is all about how hard to push benefits. So Matt says, when writing content for potential clients, I often feel that pushing the benefits too hard can make them stand off and hesitate. I think this comes from the many industry warnings to the public, such as don't be rushed into a decision, and if it seems too good to be true, etc. What are your thoughts on this, Andy?
Okay, so the first thing to do is when we talk about benefits, I like to phrase it from my customer's priorities point of view. So I will say something like, our objectives, we've agreed this is what you want to achieve. And then we write down what their priorities are. Yeah. So in effect, that's the benefits they're going to get from it. But I don't call it my benefits. I call it your priorities. So let's say you turn to somebody and they want a very good pension. They want to retire at 60 or something. Then we've said, we've agreed your priorities are you want a good pension and you want to retire at 60. For that to happen, we've agreed the best way to do it. So I don't talk about benefits, I talk about their priorities, which are the same thing, right? Because the benefits they're going to get are the priorities they want. So that's the best way to do it. And then the more benefits I can put in, the better. So if I can say, as we've agreed, this is what you want to achieve, the word agreed is the key thing, Dan, right? You've told me this, so as we've agreed, and then I just list down. And if there's 10 of them, I don't care. You want a good pension, you want to retire at 60, you want to buy your kids a house, you want to do all that, just list them all down. There's nothing wrong with that. It feels like you're forcing it on them if you're saying, these are the benefits of me. But if you say, these are the objectives you said you want, well, that's a much nicer way to do it. Yeah. So I suggest you start with that. And then underneath you say, and we've agreed that the best way I can help you achieve all these benefits is by doing this. So it's saying, this is what you want, the priorities you've got, and this is how we're going to deliver it. So I love that question from Matt, but that's how I overcome it.
And to add to that, Mike's put a comment in the chat saying, always use the client's phraseology because they're always going to take their own advice. So it goes hand in hand with that, doesn't it?
Nice.
So next question I'm going to ask is a question from Coleman, who says, our initial meeting is free, and the goal for us is to get the prospect to commit to come on board, which involves them committing to pay our planning fee. How can we make the meeting incomplete in that context?
So if it's working for you anyway, so if you like, the reason I wanted it incomplete was because I wanted meeting number 2. It sounds like from Coleman here that he doesn't really want meeting 2. He just wants them to buy something, in which case then you do probably want to complete it. So in where the advice I was given before was assuming you wanted a second meeting. Yeah. If the output, the first thing is you want to move on, but there's going to be a planning fee, then the close is going to be slightly different. But the close is going to be something like this. So what I've heard your priorities are this. We can best help you with this. For us to do that, the next steps are quite easy. All that happens is we do this, you do that. Our fee for kicking things off is going to be this. And then so you try and close it that way. So I think in Coleman's example, it sounds like he's not necessarily after a second meeting. He's after a sale in the first meeting. So he'd have to do it in that way. So then it becomes complete then.
No, that's a good point. And then let's say the goal of the first meeting is to then get a second meeting. Anne asks a good question saying, out of curiosity, how long would Andy spend on that first meeting?
That's a good question. So with the first meeting, I tend to go for like 30, 45 minutes. I've got myself quite quick at this, so I quite like doing that. So that's how long I tend to spend. And because of the word incomplete, so it's different in Coleman's example, because of this incomplete thing, Dan, what happens is, if we haven't finished the meeting after 30 minutes, I don't care because I wanted it to be incomplete anyway. So if I say, oh, look at the time, look how much we've covered already. There's still a couple more things that I feel that I want to talk about with you. Would you have any objection to having a quick follow-up tomorrow? Blah, blah, blah. So I suggest you go a little bit shorter because it's another reason for it to be incomplete. Yeah. I've trained my PA quite extensively on this, and she's really good at this, but also she's taken it a bit further than I wanted her to, Don. So it happens like this. So say someone rings, speaks to Emma, and they say, we really want to have a 1-hour face-to-face meeting with Andy. And she'll say, that's good. I can put something in the diary. We don't need to take an hour of your time, though. Andy's really quick at this. Like 30 minutes should be fine. It'd be good. And then also, if you want face-to-face, his diary's pretty rammed. So can I suggest we do a Teams call? Because you can, you'll see him tomorrow, or phone call. And so she's really good at that. So they want 1 hour face-to-face, but she ends up with half an hour on the phone. So it's really good. But the thing that she started doing now, Dan, is if somebody says, I really do prefer face-to-face, she just says, have you seen his face? Like, just trust me, phone's better. Thanks, Emma. But it works really well. So that way they ask for an hour face-to-face. You don't have to say yes. You can say he really wants to talk to you as well, but he's pretty quick. You don't need to take an hour of your time. So there you go. That's my bias. So it's almost like some of the stuff I'm saying, if I had power over you all, I would order it. I would order you to agree the proposal before you send the proposal. I would order that if I had any power over you. The 30 minutes is just my personal bias.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I'm also hearing that we're incredibly lucky that 20 minutes ago you didn't escape out the window.
Yes, no, this is really cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go for a question from Sally next. Now, Sally talks about discounts. So Sally asks, what about a discount on fees if the client would then go on to provide future business, either for themselves or via referrals, which is then going back to that who loves us and who has the power to help us that you mentioned right at the start.
Yeah, so absolutely, you can do that if you want to, Sally. I don't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't, Sally. This is personal bias. I can absolutely understand this because, like I say, I don't give discounts because it's not for my other customers. But I suppose you could look your other customers in the eye and say, yeah, but they gave me 3 referrals and they gave me this. So there's a marketing element to that. So if you feel comfortable doing that, the only thing I would suggest there, Sally, is it's very easy for people to say, I'll give you referrals, I'll give you this, and I'll give you this, and then it doesn't happen. So you just need to make sure you're comfortable that you trust them enough that it will. Yeah, my personal bias is not to. I want to be able to look my customer in the eye and say, you know, you paid me 10,000. Well, they did not pay 9,000. Don't worry about it. That's my personal bias, but I can absolutely understand the desire to do that, Sally. So fill your boots, but make sure they hold their part of the bargain.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I know that there's a few people in the comments there saying along the same lines as you, Andy, where don't undervalue what you do, don't beg for business, discounts, not giving them shows integrity, etc. So there are definitely 2 sides to that, aren't there? I'm going to go to a question now from an anonymous attendee, which always sounds really mysterious, doesn't it?
Really
I promise
scared.
it's not me
Yeah,
asking this.
Asking for a friend. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so the person says, if Andy was starting a financial advisory business, how would he market it and attract clients if he had a tight marketing budget?
Okay, so the first thing I would do is the thing I said before, is I will go through my existing customers and find love and power. That's the first thing I would do. So that costs nothing, literally nothing. That's the first thing I would do. And by that is actually the only thing I would do to start with. I would look at my existing customers, partly because it's, you said about a tight budget, that actually costs nothing, literally free. It's most likely to work. And it's very quick. So even if it doesn't work, you find out quickly they're not going to help you anyway. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is I would then ask for advice from people who already had a business. And I would ask, who are you finding it easiest to sell to at the minute? Who seems to be the people who are buying most quickly? Who seems to have the money? What are the common characteristics? And so when you've done that, then you would sort of market towards those. You work back from your target market, really. So, for example, let's say you've decided that you really want to work with dentists who've got their own practice and they're between 50 and 60. Well, where do they hang out? There's probably a magazine called Dentist Weekly. Yeah, there's probably Dental Society. They probably have some trade magazines. They probably get together once a month to talk about particular things. So work back from that. So they're the 2 things, and they are miles cheaper. I would absolutely avoid spending money on something unless it was extremely likely to work.
Brilliant. Right, so let's do a few more questions because I'm aware of the time. So Ian earlier asked about some scripts. We've done that, so that's brilliant. Let's go to a question from Shabar, who asks, are proposals necessary, or can you discuss fees in person and then agree them at the end of the meeting? So would you still send one in this case? A lot of the time, the client is buying us and the relationship.
So the proposal thing, it's not needed if you and the customer are happy to go without it. I mean, my favorite proposal I ever sent was a text. I'd already been working with someone for 6 months and they said they wanted to extend the retainer. And I said, well, I don't really want to waste any time writing another proposal. Can I just send you a text? Another 6 months, this is the rate. And you hit reply and go, yeah. So actually, that's probably my favorite ever proposal because it was like a 2-line text. I do like, I mean, it's a great question by Shabbat. I don't want to write anything till it's all agreed. And the main things that I want to agree are what their outcomes are. Secondly, what my deliverables are going to be or my products are going to be. What the timings are going to be and what the price is going to be. So you want this, I'm doing this, the timings are that, and the price is that. So as long as I've got those 4 things, you could agree them all verbally. I personally like to put it in writing, even if it's just 4 bullet points. I quite like it in writing just because I can say, my understanding is this. Please let me know if I've got anything wrong. So Shabra, it doesn't have to be a big formal 20-page color in thing. It can just be 4 bullet points, but I always just like it in writing because it could be me who forgets what we've agreed 3 months down the line. These things happen. So that's my bias, but I don't write anything until we've agreed it verbally.
No, that's a great answer. Right, let's do one more. I'm aware there's also a question from Sally in the Q&A box about how to get those Tuesday tips. So we'll talk about that right at the end because I'm sure you've got a link for everybody to follow. Well, opposed to people just shouting tips at you in your email inbox.
Yeah, just open the window and shout tips. That should do it.
Yeah. So last question from Mike. how does Andy rein in the tendency to give too much away in the first meeting and leave the client wanting to hear more?
Yeah, love that question, Mike. So the thing you want to do is use something to shut yourself up, right? That's the important thing. You have to know how to shut yourself up, because I love what I do, so I can talk about it. And like Mike says, I used to find this quite hard, actually, Mike, because the answers to your questions are already inside my head. And you know they are, and I know they are. So it almost looks rude if I say, and if you give me money, then I'll tell you. All right, so I have to overcome that as well. So what I did is I had to find something that shut me up. So what I did is I put a limit on the time of the meeting, just like we all do. So if someone says, how do we go about this? And I'd say something like this. Well, there's a few ways. Let me go back to the office and see what's worked well with my other customers. Let me go and ask people who've said the same thing that you've just said, what was most beneficial for them. And that way I've got a better answer for you. And when we get back together, Mike, I'll bring that with you, with me, sorry. That's my preferred way to do it. So use the end of the meeting as a cutoff point, but also have your sentence lined up for, I'll tell you what, let me go and ask around. So for example, my version of this, Mike, a while ago, I was talking to Mike Phelan, Manchester United's assistant manager he was at the time. And I really liked talking to him, and I was quite pleased with myself talking to Mike Phelan. But I also wanted to meet with him again. So one of Mike's questions was, if I'm doing an after dinner speech, how much should I charge? How much do people charge with this stuff? Well, I know a bit about that, but not everything. So I said to Mike, well, let me give you a headline rate, Mike, but then how about this? Let me go and ask around. Let me speak to other people I know on the speaker circuit. Let me go and speak to people who hire these people. I'll find out a much better answer, and then maybe we could have another coffee, and I'll bring all that detail with you. And he said, oh, that's very good of you, Andy. And it was very good of me. But what happened then, Mike, I could have probably answered enough that Mike would have said, that's fine, I never want to see you again. But I said, I'm going to go a bit more than that. And then that way he did want to see me again. And then we ended up doing a joint webinar, and it was all like lovely, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had that thing, Mike. So the thing is, know that you've got an end point of the meeting, because that forces you to shut up. But also, Mike, know your script to say, I can't say everything now because I need to go and find out for you.
No, that's great. And who would never want to see you again, Andy? Who?
I've got child 4, child 3, child 2, and mostly child 1. Sally said before about Tuesday tips. Let me just answer that. My email address, Dan, is my first name and then my whole name. It's just andy@andybounds.com. So andy@andybounds.com. If anyone wants my tips, just email me, andy@andybounds.com, and say the word tips. Don't say please unless you want to. Just obviously, Dan will be saying please. Nobody else has to. So andy@andybounds.com, tips, and then we'll just sign you up to the duty tips. You're very welcome to them.
Thank you, Andy. Right, one final question from me.
Go.
And then we'll let you get on with your day, because we've all got a lot of work to do after the last hour to improve our proposals and our objection handling, etc. Okay, so proposal goes out, and I can't imagine it ever happening to you, Andy, but certainly happens to us and other people on the call. They get ghosted. Yeah. Prospect doesn't come back to them. And we wrote an article a few weeks ago. We included one of your tips, putting new in the subject line, the Chris Voss magic email, the Marcus Sheridan email. What tips have you got for when people get ghosted?
Okay, so you minimize the chance of getting ghosted if you do what I said before and pre-arrange the follow-up call. Yeah. So the reason you often get ghosted, you send the proposal and you wait for them to come back to you, and then they don't, and you're not sure whether to chase them or not. But if I say to you, before I send the proposal, let's pre-agree when we're going to have the follow-up call, I'm less likely to get ghosted. Now, if you say, it's all right, Andy, we won't schedule, I promise I'll come back to you, I don't like that then, because I've lost all power. So then I use the word telephone tennis. So that's very nice of you, but we'll end up playing telephone tennis because we're both busy. Look, let's just put it in, 10 o'clock, 10 minutes. We could always cancel it if need be. So that's the thing. I bust a gut to get the follow-up call booked in. That's the first thing. If it turns out that they then don't dial in when they should have done, my favorite way to chase it when I'm being ghosted, if I have someone's mobile number, I send them a text or a WhatsApp. So what will happen is this. I send you the proposal today. We're supposed to have 10 o'clock call tomorrow, but you bloody cancelled it. Then what I'll do is I'll send you a text sometime later on in the day, and I'll say, sorry, we missed each other this morning, which is politer than saying you cancel. Sorry, we missed each other this morning. I'll call you at 4 p.m. today. Instead, text me a different time if that doesn't work. So can you hear? I'm texting, not emailing. And what I'm doing, I'm not saying, can I call you at 4? It's, I'm calling you at 4. Text me a different time if 4 doesn't work. And what sometimes people will come back to you and say, sorry, I had a doctor's appointment. These things happen. Can you make it 5 o'clock? All right. So that's all I do. The most important way to reduce the chance of being ghosted is to pre-arrange the call. The problem is when you don't pre-arrange it, because then you're like chasing them. So pre-arrange the call if you can, but then you chase it by text if something goes wrong.
Understand. Thank you so much, Andy. Right, before we say our goodbyes and our proper thank yous to you, Andy, I'm going to go multimedia again, as you called it, Andy, and try and share my screen so everyone can see our next webinar. Hopefully that works and you can now see a slide. Over to you, Abby, to explain who we got coming up next.
Thanks, Phil, and thank you, Andy. That was amazing. My notebook is pretty full. So,
cool.
Yes, I think we've learned a little bit today about the fact that content is king, and we'd argue yes, but only if you know how to distribute it and promote it properly. And we've found in our experience that a lot of people, perhaps on this call, perhaps outside of, don't get the balance right between production and promotion. So to learn more about that, next month, we've got another amazing guest. We're speaking to Ross Simmons, who, if anybody saw Phil's giveaway on LinkedIn the other day, Ross's book, Create Once, Distribute Forever. If you've enjoyed today's session with Andy, that'll tick loads of boxes for you, as will July's webinar. He's a global marketing expert, he's an author, he's an entrepreneur, and I will put a link in the chat now if you want to have a look at what we'll be chatting about with him. But we are slightly breaking with the norm. Ross is joining us from Canada, so it won't be at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. You can stay in your office, you can retire to the living room, it's your choice. But we will be joined by Ross at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 16th of July. Phil and I had a chat with him last night. We've got it all outlined. We're really excited to share his company for an hour. So the link's in the chat. It'll be in the follow-up that I'll send with Andy's recording later today. So yeah, get signed up and we will look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Abby. And contact details on the screen, Andy's website, Andy's LinkedIn profile. Andy, just give your email address again so people can get your tips.
Andy@andybounds.com.
Fantastic. And all that remains is to say thank you, Andy. That was from the bottom of Yardstick's heart. Thank you for spending an hour with us. There's so many valuable tips there that people can take away and put in to their sales process. That's going to mean they run more successful businesses and more people get financial advice, financial planning, that value that you spoke about, Andy. So, Andy, thank you so much for today. Everybody on here really appreciates it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Cheers. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.